Hi guys, Ancient Warrior. Welcome back to Prepping and Free America. If you like what you hear here, hit the subscribe button. If you want to be the first kid on your block to know what craziness I'm talking about next, hit the bell icon with all. And leave comments, folks. I got to know where your minds are at. I got rid of the Swami cap, so I don't really know what you're thinking. Folks, Friday night, excuse me, I've been doing some yard work and got dirt and crud in my throat. Beautiful day out there today. Beautiful. I understand by Tuesday or Wednesday, it's supposed to get real nasty. Okay, let's talk about is life imitating art? Now it should be the other way, art imitating life, but I'm asking it the way I did for a reason. 1995, 2003, 2011. Do you have any idea what those dates mean? I'm sure you don't. Most of you probably going, no, not really. Terrorist attack, maybe, or something? Sort of. In 1995, a movie called Outbreak came out with Dustin Hoffman, Rene Russo, and Donald Sutherland, and Morgan Freeman. The theory behind it was that a guy had smuggled some monkeys into the country. One had gotten loose and was carrying a disease, and people who got it was dropping quick and dying from it. Sound familiar? 2003, movie called Absalom. Now, this was not a big movie. Matter of fact, when I tried to look it up, as far as I can tell, it was only distributed in the Arab Emirates, and it made less than $8,000. It starred Christopher Lambert, Ron Perlman, uh, Lou Diamond Phillips, and Kelly Brook. And it's based around a worldwide pandemic where they come up with this drug Absalon. It's supposed to be the cure-all. 2011, a movie called Contagion. When it came out, you know, our local drive-in happened to show Outbreak and Contagion both one night. And a lot of people started looking at Contagion going, that looks like what's going on right now in 2020. Had we known about Epsilon, that would have even been a harder movie to look at. Let's go back to Absalon. Let's talk about Absalon. The basic idea is the movie opens with a narrator talking and a crawler talking about how the disease went worldwide and all yada yada yada. The movie opens with Christopher Lambert in a room with a guy sitting at a desk, a man in a black hat, black fedora, black long coat, or great coat, whatever you want to call it, and a gas mask on. He walks in, pulls a gun, and shoots the guy at the desk. And I thought, wow, what is this? Turns and leaves the room. And I'm going, why didn't Christopher Lambert stop it? And then all of a sudden he yells, freeze! And the picture gets real weird looking, and he says, you know, when I tell you to freeze it, I need it to stay right there. And this computer tech says, he says, do you know how that feels? He says, you shouldn't feel anything. It's just photos in the air. He's a cop investigating this man's murder. He asked for if there was any other video from other angles, and the guy says, we can only take these two angles from the security cameras. Anything else has got to have a warrant for. So Christopher Lambert gets called into the chief's office, and Lou Diamond Phillips is in there. And he's dressed like a poor man's Neo from Matrix, you know. Got his hair slick, his hair's black, it's slicked back, dark glasses, dark great coat, black shirt. You know, he just looks like what Matrix. And they're telling him he's got to investigate this scientist's death. And as he gets ready to leave, Christopher Lambert gets ready to leave, Lou Diamond Phillips looks at him and hands him this thing, and he says, this is a warrant from the World Justice League that'll get you through any door. And he looks at his boss, why do we need this guy here for this? And he said, well, this guy was working on a cure for NPR, which was a disease that they claim came years earlier. Shows Christopher Lambert going home, taking his Absalon dosage, and if I remember right, he either had to take it once or twice a day. I think it was once a day. And Christopher Lambert is a, you know, kind of the standard for every good cop they're going to have. He's got lots of issues. He's carrying lots of baggage, and he keeps listening to a recorder of his wife, his answer machine, and you think it's a new answer, a new message every time. Through the investigation, they find out the scientist who was working on a cure for the disease, when they did an autopsy on him, they found out he didn't have Absalon in his system and he didn't have the disease in his system. It was 0-0 both places. And Christopher Lambert goes, that's impossible. Everybody's got this disease. He then goes back to the scientist's office where he was killed, and he remembers seeing the scientist, looks like he's sliding something into the drawer. He looks in the drawer, nothing there. Then he puts his hand up under it and finds a pouch and finds a disc. He takes the disc back to the tech guys at the police department and goes from there. And what they find out is it's a list of safe houses. you don't know that for a while. Him and his partner go in. They're having lunch, and a couple of guys decide they're going to try to rob them. And, you know, the good guys win, the bad guys die. So they go to they're looking at all the people that work with this scientist, and they go to his research assistant in this lab where the scientist had worked. And they're talking and yada yada. And he leaves his partner in the car while he goes in by himself. And he's talking with the research assistant and everything, and the guy's working along, and he puts a small cup of liquid in front of him, and he says, "Tea?" And the cop looks at him like, and he takes a sip of his tea and says, "Just organic tea, nothing more." Christopher Lambert starts drinking the tea. And they're talking and everything about how plants were the answer to all diseases. And that we had killed the microbes and stuff in the ground that allowed certain plants to grow and flourish. Kind of like these idiots who want to end all CO2 and who says CO2 is a bad thing, except that's what plants breathe. Dummies. But then a couple of guys break into the laboratory, shoot the research assistant, and shoot at Christopher Lambert, and he returns fire, killing both of them. Yep, sorry guys. Sometimes I just forget to turn it off. Mom's feeling better, but they're still going to let me know what's going on with her. So, he leaves, gets back to the station house, and they find out, they finally crack the code on the disc, find out it's a numeric situation, and go through. And Christopher Lambert's partner prints it off, puts it in her briefcase, and then heads home. She's calling him and telling him somebody's following her, and kind of to let him know that where she dropped it. They attack her, take her laptop and everything, and leave her severely injured. The whole time, Lou Diamond Phillips is the bad guy. Normal World Economic Forum type guy who, we're going to do whatever we have to keep them in power. But the partner doesn't die. Matter of fact, they remark, "Oh, she's breathing again," and get her loaded up in the ambulance to the hospital. The boss of the police puts guards around her so that nobody else can get in there to keep her alive, because they don't know what's going on. And finally, this one young tech hands the chief of detectives the file and shows him that the original scientist who was murdered had no Absalon and no disease in his system. Well, then now they're being searched for. Kelly Brook comes into the picture, and she and Lambert are being searched for by the bad guys. They're using satellites and everything. So he notices that after a little love scene, pseudo love scene, that the bad guys are coming up at him. So he tells her she's got to strip because she's got a tracking device on her. As she's getting ready to take her blouse off, he looks at the warrant and says, "Stop. Get dressed. We need to go." The warrant was the way they was tracking him. The electronic warrant. So they ditch their phones and everything, and as he's walking by a car, he tosses it in the front seat. Now they're blind. So he takes them to another place where they're going to be safe after a little chase scene. Bad guys chasing them. And they jump off a bridge into the back of a trash truck and go to this camp where people who are stage 2 of the disease go to die. And they're sitting there and, talking and everything with a guy named Doc who saved him from some guys who were going to rob him. He takes them in and they're talking and they're eating, and he calls Kelly Brook, this woman, by her name, and she says, "You know me?" And he says, I know about your research, and also there's a big bounty out on you for your crime." And she says, "Why don't you collect it?" He says, "I'm not so sure you did it." See? People with open eyes will see things that others don't. So the next morning, the doc and Kelly Brook is talking, and he's talking to 2 little kids, and he sends them on out to play, and Doc looks at her and says, the one little boy was stage 2. And he was going to die soon. The other little boy, he remarked, "I want you to look at his numbers." And they were 00. And she said, "He's got natural immunity." He said, "The Absalons cured him." And she said, the doc looks at him and says, "He's never had Absalon. He's never had the vaccine." And if you watch, kind of in the back of her mind, you see it click in on. They go back to the original laboratory where the young research assistants killed, and they find this doctor who's been advising the head of a pharmaceutical company everything. After a big fight, Christopher Lambert passes out, and he realizes when the guy told him before he was killed that the cure was in him. And he figured out the tea was when he drank the tea, and the guy told him, said, "Why don't you take the cure?" And the guy looked at him and says, "Because I'm blood type AB." And he said, "What blood type are you?" And he said, "Oh." He said, the universal donor, as he's drinking the tea. Come to find out, to get the cure to work right, it had to be made in somebody's blood system who had type O blood. So he runs into the doctor, who's been advising Ron Perlman, the bad guy, leader of the bad guys. And the bad guys break in, shoot the doctor after a lengthy conversation. And Kelly Brooks looks at Ron Perlman on the computer and says he had the cure in him. So they test his blood real quick, and oops, his little tester comes up blue and says, oops, he's got the cure. Then they test Christopher Lambert's blood. And it's not quite yet to the point to where he's got the cure in his system. They've got to wait just a little bit. And Ron Perlman starts running his mouth, like bad guys tend to do. And she said, the Absalon is causing the NPR, isn't it? He said, oh yeah, the disease burned out years ago. It was just a way for us to keep money coming in. Kind of like all these booster shots. What damage is that doing to our systems? Well, not any to mine. So the movie ends up, Lou Diamond Phillips tries to blow the building up. He gets killed. And Christopher Lambert saves the day by disarming the bomb. It's always a green wire. At the end of the movie, you see this old man talking, who was the original narrator of the movie. And during the movie, Christopher Lambert had given a little boy that was dying this card of a superhero. And the kid looked at him and said, did you